My name is Sarah Miller. I am 29 years old. And last Christmas, my dad looked me in the eye and called me an idiot for keeping a gift from my grandmother. The gift was a check for $5 million. He tore his up. My mom tore hers up. My sister dropped hers into the fireplace and filmed the flames for her followers. My brother crumpled his under the table like a gum wrapper. I was the only one who folded mine into my purse and said, "Thank you, Grandma." The next morning, a bank manager locked the door behind us, sat me down, and said 4 words I will never forget. My family spent the rest of that year trying to take back what they had laughed at and what they did to get it changed, everything I thought I knew about my own blood. Before we go on, please like and subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from and what time it is. I read every single one. Now, let me take you back to Christmas Eve, to the last dinner my grandmother ever cooked. My grandmother, Sylvia, never locked her front door. Not in 47 years. That December, her house smelled the same as it had the first time I visited her when I was 4 years old. Oakwood smoke from the fireplace, banana bread cooling on the butcher block, and something bitter underneath. Something I didn't put a name to until much later. I came up the hill in my old Subaru with a paper bag of apples from the tree I'd planted behind my rental. She met me at the door in her corn yellow sweater and the apron she'd been wearing since her hip first started to ache. She kissed my forehead the way she always did, with one hand on my jaw, like she was double-checking I was still the same person. "Tell me about your class," she said. She said it every Saturday, and she always meant it. We sat at the kitchen table with mismatched teacups, and I told her about Daniel, a 3rd grader who wouldn't speak in group work but could write paragraphs that left me a little shaken. She listened with her whole face. She asked me what I thought Daniel needed. I said, "Patience." She said, "Then give him Saturdays." I told her about the bed I'd bought at the flea market, a spindle frame missing a drawer, and she laughed into her tea and said it was probably haunted by a farmer who would not approve of my reading habits. Her hand shook a little when she set the cup back down. I pretended I didn't see it. We knitted for a while. She was working on something small and gray that she wouldn't show me. I was trying badly to finish a scarf I'd started in October. Outside the window, the cardinal she fed came down to the feeder, took one seed, and left the way he always did. She watched him like he was somebody she'd been expecting. When I left that day, she pressed a thick envelope into my hand on the porch. Inside were 2 crisp $10 bills for gas. She gave me the same envelope every month, and I never cashed them. I kept them in a shoebox under my bed because what she was giving me wasn't gas money. It was a reason to come back. I didn't know it yet, but that was the 3rd to last Saturday afternoon I would ever have with her. I drove back down the hill whistling. My mother never called me to ask how I was. She called to tell me how she was, to find out what I had, and to decide if she needed some of it. She caught me on the drive home, 10 miles out of town, the turn signal ticking like a small metronome inside my dashboard. "Sarah, honey, are you up visiting the old lady again?" That was what my mother called my father's mother. Never Grandma, never Sylvia, just the old lady. I told her I go every Saturday. She sighed the way she sighed when she wanted me to feel unreasonable. "She's fine, sweetheart. She has her pension." My older brother Grant was there with her. I could hear him chewing something. "Sarah, I need a ride to Dan's garage Monday. Truck's out again." I told him I had class. "So, afternoon then," he replied, not even asking. My sister Holland texted while I was still on the phone. She lived an hour away in a bigger town with a husband she posted about daily but rarely mentioned in real conversation. "Hey babe, can you float me $200 just this week? I'll hit you back, promise." 3 emojis. My mother kept talking over the silence. Christmas dinner. Your father wants roast. Make sure she doesn't cook for hours this year, Sarah. She gets so tired, and then she just sits there looking at us. Nobody asked if my grandmother was feeling well. Nobody asked if her hip was worse. Nobody asked why her hand might be shaking. I realized I had been waiting quietly on the off chance that any of them might. I made a small decision on that snow-wet county road. "I'll see you Christmas Eve," I said, and hung up. The first thing my grandmother asked me to promise her wasn't to save her life. It was to keep her secret. She told me on a Saturday at the end of October in her garden, while we were cutting back rosemary for the winter. The light was low and orange. She set her shears down on the bench and sat down heavier than usual. "You remember Dr. Okafor?" she asked. I did. "I went to see her Tuesday. Pancreatic, stage 4. I've known since July." The bench felt like it tilted. I didn't cry. I think some part of me had known for months. "Chemo?" I asked. She shook her head. "No. I'd like to spend what I have here, in this garden, at the kitchen table with you. Not on a drip. Sarah, I am 82. I have had a very long, very interesting life." She took my hand. Her fingers were cold but steady. "I am not sad. I am sorting." She pinched off a sprig of rosemary and pressed it into my palm. "I have one thing to ask you. Don't tell them." I asked her why. She said, "I want Christmas to be Christmas. I do not want it to be a deathbed. I do not want your father writing his eulogy at the table. I want roast chicken and bad wine. I want one more year of pretending he is the man I raised." She got a glint in her eye then, the one that meant she was about to say something that would leave a mark. "Besides," she said, "I have a few things to give out first. It's going to be a very interesting Christmas." Every member of my family walked into my grandmother's house that Christmas Eve with a shopping list in their head disguised as affection. My father came in first, stomping snow off his boots like a man claiming a room. Richard Miller had the kind of posture that had served him for 30 years at the machine parts plant, and would, in 3 months, not be enough to keep him employed. He hung his coat on the good hook and opened the fridge without asking. My mother came in behind him, already appraising the tree, her eyes moving across the silver star my grandfather had soldered in 1974. I could see her counting the value of the ornaments. Grant brought his girlfriend, and he barely said hello to our grandmother. Holland arrived last, phone already up, filming. "Cozy grandma vibes, my loves! You have to see this fireplace." She didn't hug Grandma. She kissed the air near her cheek and went back to her angles. My grandmother moved slowly from the stove to the table in her corn-yellow sweater. She watched her family with a calm, attentive look. The look of a woman who had long ago stopped being surprised. She caught my eye once and smiled. She looked like she was in on a joke with someone who had not yet arrived. The turkey fat hissed in the pan, and Grandma pulled a small wooden box from beside her chair and set it on the table where nobody noticed. She waited until everyone had eaten. She stood up slowly, clearing her throat in that small, precise way she did before a speech. My family kept talking. They always kept talking. "I have something I'd like to give each of you," she said. Grant rolled his eyes at Holland. Grandma opened the wooden box and took out 5 identical cream-colored envelopes. She walked each one around the table. Mine was last. She touched my shoulder when she sat it down. My father opened his first. I watched his face go from expectation to confusion to anger. Inside was a check from First National Hollow Ridge, made out in Grandma's slanted blue ink for $5 million. Grant laughed before he'd even read his. "Grandma, is this a joke? You making us play Monopoly?" Holland giggled and held hers up to the light like a piece of costume jewelry. My mother's face did something strange. She looked like a child handed a kindness she didn't know how to hold. Then my father said, loud and flat, "It's fake. Don't be an idiot." He dropped his check onto his plate, gravy soaking into the corner. My mother tore hers in half slowly. "Mother, really? It isn't funny." Grant crumpled his into a ball and flicked it under the table. "And Holland?" She walked to the fireplace and dropped hers in. I watched the number 5 with 6 zeros behind it blacken and curl into a little red shape and disappear. My grandmother did not blink. She looked only at me. I took mine, folded it in half once, and put it in the inside pocket of my purse. "Thank you, Grandma," I said. She nodded just once. Nobody else noticed. I drove home that night holding onto the steering wheel as if my life depended on it. My grandmother was not senile. She was the sharpest person I had ever known. She read the Sunday paper front to back. She beat me at bridge every week. She had once caught an error on my federal tax return from memory. And 2 weeks before Christmas, she had asked me, "If you had $1 million, Sarah, what would you do first?" I had laughed and said I'd get new dry erase markers and books for my class. She had nodded as if I'd passed a test. In the morning, I went to the bank. The manager, Benedict Strom, had known me since I was 16. He smiled when he saw me, but that smile vanished the moment I slid the check across the desk. His face went the color of an envelope. "Sarah," he said, his voice trembling, "can you come with me a minute?" He led me to a private room, shut the door, and turned the latch. "Have you read what she wrote on the back?" I hadn't. I turned it over. In her slanted hand, it said, "For the one who still comes on Saturdays." Benedict took a breath. "Your grandmother came in the first week of November. She moved funds into a special account. I was the one who drafted these. Sarah, this is real. All of it. And this is only part of it." I walked out of that bank with $5 million in my account, and the realization that my grandmother had been a millionaire for longer than I had been alive. The only person who ever thought to ask about her money was my father, back in 2003, and even then, he only asked because he wanted to control it. She had told him no, and he never asked again. It took exactly 112 minutes for my family to stop calling that check fake and start calling it theirs. Benedict had to make a compliance call to my father because of an old shared account. He didn't give details, but he said a wire had posted. That was enough. My phone buzzed 32 times in 45 minutes. Holland texted, "I need my check. I changed my mind. It was an accident, Sarah. Be fair." Grant's voicemail was louder. "You give that back. That's family money, you little weasel." My mother cried on her voicemail, "Sarah, sweetheart, you don't understand what you're doing to this family." I looked at my grandmother as the knocking started at her door 40 minutes later. My father's truck pulled up. He came up the walk, furious. Grandma stood by the glass door. She didn't open it. "Richard," she said through the glass, "it is the 26th of December. It is not a good time." He screamed about the money. "I gave each of you $5 million. She replied calmly. "4 of you burned it. Go home, Richard." She turned the lock for the first time in 47 years. The week my grandmother broke her hip was the week I stopped pretending I was going to get to keep her. It happened in mid-January. She lay in the snow for 40 minutes before a friend found her. She wanted hospice at home, and that's what she got. I took a leave of absence from teaching and moved into her spare bedroom. My father visited once for 20 minutes. He told her she should let Grant bring her to a home. She said, "Richard, I am home." He never came back. Every night, I read to her. She liked my Antonia. Sometimes she corrected my pronunciation. Sometimes she slept. On a Tuesday in February at 5:47 in the morning, the house got very still. I understood without being told that she was gone. Her hand was in mine, and it was still warm. I didn't cry right away. I watched the cardinal come to the feeder, take one seed, and fly away. The funeral was that Saturday. My family came and cried loudly. Holland filmed the procession for her followers with a healing filter. I didn't film anything. My father called the lawyer, Mr. Halverson, 3 times before the gravediggers had even finished their work. He wanted to know when the will would be read. The reading was on February 20th. My father sat on one side, expecting a payday. Halverson opened a green folder. The principal remainder of the estate, the house, the 23 acres, and investment accounts valued at $40 million, was left entirely to me. The room went silent. Then my father stood up. "Is this a joke?" Halverson read the reason clause. "I leave this to Sarah. She is the only one who visited for no reason other than love. She never once asked what I had." The lawsuit arrived 4 days later. My family alleged undue influence. They claimed I had manipulated an ailing woman. I laughed. It wasn't a good laugh. I called Halverson. He told me he would represent me for free. "I owe your grandmother 30 years of her trust," he said. My sister posted videos about a family betrayal. She lost 7,000 followers in one afternoon when people realized what she was doing. The case went to court in October. My father called me his worst daughter in the marble hallway. I didn't respond. In court, Dr. Okafor testified that she had performed 3 capacity evaluations on Grandma, all proving she was of sound mind. Even the Bridge Club members testified that Sylvia was unpersuadable. The judge dismissed the contest. But the real discovery came later, when I was going through Grandma's desk. I found a small leather notebook bound with a shoelace. It was a record of 40 years of anonymous donations. 1985. Milk program $840. 1990. Textbooks $1,200. It went on until November 2025. The total was nearly $300,000. She had been feeding the children at my school, the same school my father attended as a child, for 4 decades. She never told a soul. My mother came to see me in February. She had lost weight, not from a diet, but from grief. She sat at my table and cried. She told me she had finally read a letter Grandma left her, a letter of forgiveness. She asked for $100,000 to save her spa business. I looked at her and felt nothing but a tired,